In the late 1800s, the architect actually was the controlling body. So a client would go to the architect would then hire the contractor, the architect would manage all that stuff. And then that started to translate into bigger and bigger and bigger buildings where I think the architect had less influence. And then that morphed into the smaller buildings where the contractor was in charge. So it's transitioned from that point into the point now where in most of these larger projects, the contractor is actually the master builder, and the architect is even hired by the contractor, and that's a design build program, which really takes all the design elements away. The classic example would be the World Trade Center, where Liebskin, I guess, was the architect, right? He got that commission. He won the competition outright. And then, as you see it, Childs actually became the architect that did it because Childs would be a yes man that would do what everybody wanted, whereas Liebskin was trying to do an architecture. So I think that's a pretty simple classic example of how the architect just gets scrubbed out of the formula now.
Was there a moment of epiphany, so to speak, when you said, I could do all of these?
When I was 25 years old, I'd worked for two firms for 2 years each. I went to this developer and I said, hey, my thesis was a row house project and I'd like to show it to you because I want to leave the firm and I want to be my own architect and blah, blah, blah. And he says, don't be an idiot. You don't want to be an architect. You want to be a developer, which was just crazy. If you think about, that was, as you call the aha moment, where someone actually was belittling me for being an architect and basically enlightening me to do something different. And I didn't even think about it. It's like, yep, okay, let's do it. So his mother owned a piece of property that was a triangular property, 7,000 feet. He says it's $50 a foot. Give me $5,000 down and close in 5 months. And that started the whole project. That started the whole process. I had a friend that was working for Price Waterhouse that did a pro forma, and the pro forma was completely wrong. But at least there were enough parts and bits that got it to the finish line where it made sense. So that's kind of how it all started.
So I know you have the AIA piece, and I know you can write the pro forma and get the equity partners. Do you do your own construction management?
We do. We don't have a general contractor. That went to bed probably near 2000 when we had a contractor underbid a project and basically screw us. He walked off the job, and we learned at that point, I mean, the whole process of having a general contractor is just a nightmare. If you think about a project that we did called the Union, there were basically no specifications, no details, no job directives, no lawsuits, no change orders, no delays. I mean, it just got so simple, and we cut out 50% of the architectural true work by doing it ourselves and by not having a general contractor. The correspondence that goes back and forth, covering your ass, our contractor trying to screw you, and the incorrect drawing that the contractor seems to have, 10 bodies in a job shack that can just basically paper you to death. These projects, the crazy thing is that the weakest link is the superintendent, and the superintendent typically doesn't have, typically it's not even a high school degree, can't read, can't write, can't spell, barely knows how to use a computer, only for like computer games, works a sunflower seed like nobody else. And this is the most important part, right? This guy that's managing everything. No, we're not doing that, because if you draw it, you build it. So you're the superintendent on site.
One of the downsides of the different industries is the loss of that one person oversight, but one of the benefits, if you want to call it that, is that when things go awry, the risk falls on different people, and you're able to manage your risk by, I've heard a lot of developers say, once we're out of the ground, I can breathe a huge sigh of relief. Not that, the worst can't happen, but once we're going vertical, they have certain guarantees in their contract. And so I'm curious, as you've continued to consolidate, there's not a lot of different shoulders onto which to put the risk. How have you thought about risk management as your projects, especially, keep getting bigger and bigger?
I think that's a fallacy that you have, multiple parties, therefore the risk gets spread out. I think what happens is you have people that you can go sue, and that's a bad program. It's a bad way to go. For instance, we have on the project called the Polk, which we're building right now, we have the horrible, horrible concrete guy. So, what can I do? I can document it properly. I can go sue him at the end for delays, or I can try and manage him all the way through, keep pushing him, give him support, try and get other people to work from other concrete companies we have and supervise some of his work to get to the finish line, because you ultimately have all the risk, no matter what the program is. So if you can actually bring the risk down in the amount of people that you're using, so there's less moving parts, that is how we manage risk. And more specifically, insurance is paramount. You must be properly insured. Everybody in the project's got to be properly insured, and you have to have a proper contract that allocates indemnity from the people that are working on your project back to you via their company and their insurance. But the reality is the insurance is what governs. I don't care how rich or not rich the people that are working on your project are, they're just not going to cough up the money. The way to get at their money is just unbelievably difficult. So it's insurance that's going to be the key to success there. If you have a problem, and you hopefully, you eat it. Sometimes you just move on.
On the asset management leasing side, do you have your own property management company, or do you work with?
We do, and that's got to be the worst job on the planet. It's absolutely just horrific. The bonus for that is that, let's say at the end of next year we'll have 250 units. If I have to hire a management company for that, it's going to cost me $350,000 to do that.
Of course.
Whereas I can probably have $100,000 worth of labor in the office that can do that. So there's a delta of income that's going to happen through that efficiency again. So no middle, we try to cut the middleman out, and then they don't care. I mean, there's no incentive for them to perform. Typically, you have a vested interest, and people that don't have a vested interest aren't going to act 100% on your behalf. They're going to go to where crisis management is, and maybe it's someone else that's screaming louder.
Since we're on construction, are you a fan of the competitive bid for obvious reasons, or the negotiated contract with different subs because there's the relationship and quality? Where do you fall on that one?
We need to get 3 bids just to understand where the true cost should be, and then we try to pick the person that we want and we negotiate with them. And there's been situations where we've actually paid people more than the low bid guy and not negotiated, let's say the middle guy, because it's just easier to have the drywall, stucco, and metal stud guy be one person. So
yeah,
where's the value? The value is this about money. You're already over budget, but you're going to pay a little more. And that's a classic example. Just happened. And then the other thing that just happened was we had a horrible excavation subcontractor that cost us delays that we actually couldn't go after. So we actually hired a more expensive excavation contractor that just seems to have their stuff together better, and they're doing a better job. Is there a dollar value to that? No, but maybe there's a quality of life and a grief factor that kind of comes with that kind of gets vaporized. The grief factor does, and that's worth a lot to us.
I heard a quote, I think it was John McNellis, the guy who speaks at ULI a lot. He said, if every building you build is bigger than the last one, you'll either be the biggest developer in the world or you'll be bankrupt.
Yeah,
so you,
I don't want to do that.
So you have fallen on the side of find a sweet spot project size and don't become enamored of. Talk me through that, because you're just
bigger is not better. I mean, just because you can build a bigger project and it's more efficient, there's a certain, in our world, there's a certain efficiency that doesn't happen. One, then you have the job shack with 15 guys in it. So Greg Yater, for instance, is building our 56 unit building right now, which is 8 stories up, 2 down, and he has Philip helping him, and that's it. There's no big huge printing press in there, printing out job directives and RFIs and so forth. It's a very simple task. If we got it to 100 units, it'd be a different story. Do I have the capital to do that? Well, let's go and let's just take it real simple here and say, I can build 100 units and go and get an investor, and I'm giving away half the pie. Why don't I just go build 50 units and keep all the pie? Then I don't have the added hassle. Remember, cutting middlemen out. That's the concept. I don't have the hassle of the investor wanting to have coffee with me every day, the investor wondering where's the current accounting. What, are you over or under budget? Oh, let's start to explain how that works. Hey, we're over budget. Oh, holy shit, you're over budget. Well, we better work through this right now. Well, slow down. We'll work it out. No, I want to know right now what's going on. And so there's this added dynamic and drama that goes with having investors that has not worked out well for us. It works out well for a lot of people, but I'm not interested in that dynamic. That just is not part of my my needs or wants. And if I can't do it without the investor, I'm not going to do it. We don't want to do any fee for hire work. We've had people come to us, and I've got a guy that wants to build a 1,200 foot tall tower in downtown San Diego. Well, you get all excited. Yeah, hey, I want to be that guy there. And then all of a sudden you start thinking about, okay, well, who's in control here? Who's calling the shots? Well, he's probably going to call the shots, and he's probably going to dictate that we do this and that. Well, who's paying for what? Well, where's the long-term benefit? Well, the long-term benefit's going to be, it's going to be his deal, and I'm going to be Liebskin, and I'm going to get kicked out just like Liebskin got kicked out. It's just wrong. It's not our business plan. You got to stick to your business plan. You got to put your head down. Don't look up. Don't let all the kind of the sounds around you start to distract you.
So you became AIA, and then you said, okay, now I'm going to run some of my own deals. And then you also got into the business of construction management and even property management. Is this primarily something where you say, this is my path? Or if you had a buddy who had studied real estate finance and done a bunch of work in that arena, would you convince them, hey, go get your MA in architecture and see if you can't take this route as well?
Well, remember, the premise or thesis we always start with is we're creating architecture. We're not trying to create business. We're trying to create architecture. Well, how do you do that? Well, if you can control every component and actually own the business, then you have the ultimate control in creating architecture. So the byproduct is you're making money, but the principal notion is you want to create architecture that changes cities. So what do you need? What are the tools necessary to do that? Well, you could create architecture by hiring an architect if you're not an architect, but don't go get the hack architect. Get the guy or the girl or the persons that are doing the stuff that's something you're proud of and something you want to do, because this is your legacy. I mean, we're not around too long, and hopefully when the day is done, and you kind of sit down and take a break and you can look back, you've done two things. One, you've made people's lives better, cities better, and you've actually compensated yourself properly for that. So if you can couple the three things, you've won. You've won. I mean, again, the profit margin always seems to come, not always, but more often than not it does. But that's not the premise of which we go by. So for instance, if we need to clad something and it costs more money and our bonus or our benefit or our margin doesn't grow with that, then maybe that's just the way it goes, because I don't want to be looking at a bad decision for the rest of my life. I'd rather be looking at something that we're proud of. And that will be much more valuable than another dollar in your bank.